Distinguished professors, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our session. Well, our session is titled Bottom-up Governance, Citizen Participation, Beyond Collaboration. We have 5 very valuable speakers. Now we are not going to focus on theory. We will hear the governance and at second phase, since this is a session on governance and citizen participation, we value your participation too. So our speakers will speak 15 minutes each, and then we can have your questions and contributions through the facilities we have, or you can just ask it. By the way, in the panels, the time is up and Q&A time is up as well, but we will limit the presentations to 15 minutes so you can take floor too. So today we'll talk about governance, and in the morning we had a session about metropolitan governance, and this will be like a complementary session. Well, I'm not having a presentation delivered here, by the way. I'm just making an introduction. There are political, social, legal, and economic, and many more aspects of governance. There are economic, political, and technological changes around the world, and these, of course, change the concepts on policy and governance. It sometimes enriches it, it sometimes makes it poorer. When we look at the theories and concepts being developed on governance, we see that human is more in the center now, and all the designs are tailored for the humans, almost all of them nowadays. And governance is a new concept that appeared. Well, governance has always been here, but in modern ages, nowadays, it is now a discipline, a concept, and it has a framework of its own. When a concept is provided as a model, then it's easier to apply it. It has a concrete application guide, we can say, and as there are more cultured people in the community, when they are aware of their political powers. By the way, representative democracy is insufficient. Therefore, democratization of the democracy is what people talk about nowadays. In 1980s, the World Bank said that the loan processes were failing because of the governance problems in the countries, and there were certain concepts provided in Rio too. And then in 1996 there was Habitat in Istanbul, and then in 1999 it was in EU, and then in 2000 we had the white document, so white paper. In all the democracy-related issues, governance is always mentioned, and the criteria and the concepts have been worked on more recently. When we say governance, there is the one who govern and there are those who are governed. But governance should be shared, and there are basic processes of the public management, public governance, as you know, dear participants. The public policies are prepared and decision taking is important. Decisions are taken and they are applied, the decisions, and then they are being audited. So the public actors, all the related actors, can contribute in a collaborative manner. So governance means that not only in terms of the participants, it is not a result of a requirement to improve the democracy. In this community environment, you have to focus on governance. I mean, you have to cover and include the other parties. If not, the outcomes are not valid. So in terms of efficiency, governance is important. So it has important opportunities for the mayors. As you focus on governance, you can do better jobs and you can practice better. Last one thing that we would like to highlight, the governance concept is not realized saying let's do governance. Well, it requires an ecosystem. Governance demands certain conditions, and there are different studies, from different organizations. There are different criteria, but transparency in the public sector, accountability in the public sector, not only financial accountability, by the way. How much of what you promised can you realize? And outcome focused administration, intention, or rule of law, or proper running of law. So when these are all covered, there is better governance. So after this framework introduction, I would like to invite Ali, Faruk, Göksu for the presentation he needs to deliver, and I need to turn on the slides. He graduated from METÜ. He graduated from Department of City Planning in 1984, and he also participated to many important projects like Orange Blossom Valley and Zafertepe Slum Project. He develops strategies, innovative models, and suggestions for the future of the cities in Urban Strategy Company he founded. And he also has Anatolian Design Workshop. He founded the workshop. It is in Kadıköy. He has workshops going around in different cities like Muğla city. Workshops, a different level to governance, will be the title of his presentation. Thank you. If you could warn me 2 minutes before my time is up, I'll be happy. Hello everyone. Well, for a decade I have organized workshops, and I will pass you our experiences. How can we reflect these experiences in application? While we are doing it, what can be the tools we can use? There are international experiences, we can all reach them, but How can we develop the tools that are specific to our needs, to our neighborhoods, to our district, etc. Well, since it was about Marmara, we had a vision workshop looking from up to bottom. So we should have participation. Only the experts or politicians shouldn't have the vision. Community's participation to the vision build up is important. This is what we did in vision workshop, Kadıköy, Kartal, or in other workshops. We had a bottom-up approach. How can we help the people discover their problems, and how can we cooperate with them to solve those problems? Vision workshop. We tried to provide different perspectives to cities in the workshops. There are 81 cities in Turkey, and what is the success or failure ratio of mirroring these cities on top of each other? I don't know how we did it. Everybody can just assess it for themselves. If you're going to write new city stories, if we are going to have new visions, then we should have a different perspective on cities. We have some bracelets for the cities, golden, blue and green bracelets. So different strategies can be produced for different cities. For instance, last week we had an earthquake in Istanbul, and nowadays we discuss how can we create more outdoor areas for cities, how can we turn those places to emergency points, emergency meeting points. Marmara region, there are different dynamics in Marmara region. How can we highlight the differences? We have to highlight the different layers first of all. Think of Marmara region. If we had a bracelet to Marmara region, the Bosphorus Bridge, and there is Osman Gazi Bridge, and Çanakkale Bridge is also mentioned. So you can ring this bracelet in 4 hours. There are advantages and disadvantages to it. So what is the impact of this golden bracelet on the other cities? For instance, Yalova will be Istanbul's 14th city, or will it keep its own dynamics and write a new scenario by itself? So we have to discuss it ourselves. The second are the cities by the shore. When the geography is too big, you have to categorize it. If the cities by the shore can have a cooperation amongst each other, for instance, if Lapseki mayor can have a collaboration with Süleymaniye mayor, or Bandırma mayor can have a cooperation with a city or municipality on the other side of the coast, what will be the impact? The third bracelet is green bracelet. This covers ecology and summits. So my question is, can we have these bracelets in all the cities? This was what we did in our workshop. 81 cities, 81 vision. So we had 81 young people, and we told them, you are the mayor or the governor of the city for 6 months. What would you do? We asked them. So 3 strategies. We have to ask these questions. There are young people, and what we say to young people is, you have to know how to ask a question. You should ask such a question to improve the strategies. What will be the impact of transportation, the multiplier effect of transportation? What about the coastal cities interaction? How can we ensure the balance between economy and ecology? So we have to reconsider the cities. We have three concepts. You can make more of them. Vision, design, and social impact concepts were the basis of our concepts, and up to bottom participation is what we call it. And the second thing is rediscovering the neighborhoods, because the neighborhood concept, the neighborhood identity, well, we lost some of the values. How can we rediscover it? This is one of the most important topics of planning. Design, research, and participation. What kind of experiences did we have? Well, first in 2013, we announced the year, the design year, and then we established Cartel, and then we established Vision workshop, and then we had Muğla 1, Muğla province 1. The most important thing for the workshop is to make implementation, and we heard something from Al Jazeera. The information or knowledge which is not applied is just in between wrong and right. So we wanted to apply the solutions, rediscover the problems first, and then apply the solutions. I have very limited time, but we had lots of workshops, and there were more than 10,000 young people joining us. We had programs and projects with young people. And we said most of our workshops are in Istanbul. There are not many workshops in Anatolia, but the Anatolian region needed, and we should open up to Anatolia. We put everything under the roof. This is not a society. This is not a association. This is a platform. Our target was to support the communities at first. When we look at it first, we have a discourse and we have an action. In 1980, if I'm mistaken, Professor Ilhan will correct me. When I started the university, there was a council, and the council was mentioned theory and application, and there is a book about that summit. You can have it and read it. Well, if you only talk, if you focus on the discourse, then you miss a lot in the application part. I worked with lots of mayors, and they were saying discourse is vain, let's do it, let's apply it. But when you start doing immediately, then you can regret it afterwards. So we have to balance discourse and action. The designer, well, we call everyone designer, by the way, the architect, the participants, every participant who produces an idea is called designer, and mere participants are the people who are on the street. You can go online and check the details of the programs we make. So the first program we had was 81 cities, 81 vision. So you can click our website and you can see 60-70 pages of vision young people created. So many mayors benefit from it, and many governors benefit from it, so you can have a look at it. We have to have new methods if we want to involve people. Instead of SWOT analysis, we ask very simple question to the people on the street. What is the skill, the accumulation, the perspective, the growth, and the expectation of the city you live in? And with these questions, we take a photo of the city, current state of the city. And the second part is ecology, economy, equality, and gains and integration. And we ask, how can we ensure integration? We ask the how questions here. And the last part is about creating strategies. So the identity of the city, capacity of the city, development, protection, participation, and fiction. So strategy production is also very important for this analysis. You have more, you can have a better story. We always are on the street with people, with students, and we do this analysis, BEK analysis with people all the time. Social impact design, I don't know whether you heard it. We focus on social impact design more than this urban design. When you have a look at the international literature, social impact design is trending. There is a very good guidance we have provided. The World Bank asked for it. You have huge experience, you have your own methods. Can you make a guide out of it? The World Bank asked us, and we did it in English and in Turkish. You can look at the details. There are three important pillars here: research, participation, and design. How can we research the venue, the space, and life? You can be an architect or you can be a city planner. You have to be a design researcher. Design researchers and story writers gain the biggest monies in the world nowadays. Participation is the second part. How can we assure expectations and realities? Well, participation in Turkey is perceived as I want more, but there are realities, so how can we balance it? The third one is design. When we say design, we do not only mention the architectural design or urban planning. How can we design the strategies and solutions? So strategy design and solution design are what we focus on. We do it with the young people, and when we are out in the street, well, we consider how can we include more people. Since we have men dominant people, men don't let women talk and women don't let men talk, so we grouped people, young people, men, women, and young children. So we grouped people, we collect the problems with the plus, and with the extract we extract solutions out of problems, and we make modeling for cities. And our people don't believe in things they don't see, so we work with mock-ups. These are very detailed stuff, and in our workshops we can do anything. I mean, our workshops are mobile, so we can go anywhere and have workshops. Perceiving the behavioral patterns. When you are designing a place, you shouldn't only see it from a designer's perspective. You should have a user focused design. There are certain methods, but I don't have time to go into the details. And the last part, for 10 years we had good experience with young people and we published all of them. We have up to 120 publications. If you go on kentsel-strategy.com, you can see them. And we visited more than 90 universities last year, and our target is to visit more this year. Just invite us, come and join us. Thank you.
Evet, Ali Bey'e bu güzel sun.
Thank you very much. Now we'll listen to Emrah Engindeniz. He is Program Management Officer at UN Habitat. Sustainable urban development, improvement of slums in a participatory manner were the topics that he worked on. He's gathered vast experiences for the last 15 years. He conducted important studies in Somalia with the United Nations, and the planners of Istanbul municipality know him very well. He worked for Metropolitan Design Center. He worked in Libya. He's a graduate of Istanbul Technical University, City and Regional Planning. Today, he'll be talking about development of participatory practices in slums or shanty towns. Thank you very much. For those of you who'd like to receive more information, please write down my contact details. I'd like to continue from where Faruk left off actually. I'll start with the neighborhood scale. And people who live at the bottom of the pyramid. The gecekondu, the slum areas, this is where I want to talk about actually, which hosts low budget or low income families. Millennium Development Goals and Sustainable Development Goals provided a definition of slums. What we call slum is, by the way, when we speak of or articulate these words, many people feel uncomfortable. These are not recognized words, or the connotation of the word seems to be a negative one. The thing that we call slum is what we define on the basis of households. There are 5 basic indicators. If the household does not meet one or more of those criteria, they're called slum households. What are those criteria? Access to water, access to sanitation, hygienic conditions, sufficient living area, structural quality, durability, or location or structure which would protect the household from dangers outside, and security of tenure, if these people can be discharged by legal means. The rest are also important criteria. So the next one is informal settlements. They may be understood as slum areas, but here the definition is based on a neighborhood actually, not on the household. The basic criteria are still there. But the only missing criteria is the number of people living in the same household. Another definition is inadequate housing. Housing which is not suitable for living. Apart from the 5 main indicators, there are other indicators like affordability, accessibility, and cultural adequacy. So, this is what we want to agree on at the beginning. In Turkey, when we say slum, we are faced with a reaction from the state authorities. They say that we don't have any slums in Turkey. The gecekondus, the slums in Turkey, are much spacious and larger. But let's not be stuck with words actually. Let's have a look at the conditions and the definition. If the household meets those 5 criteria, then it is described or defined as a slum. I'd like to show you the global picture. How many people live under such conditions around the world? According to UN data and data from the World Bank, around 1 billion people live under such conditions. It means 1 in 8 of us globally live in such conditions. In the urban areas, 1 in 4 live in such conditions actually. The rate is much higher. They don't have access to water, they don't have access to sanitation. There is a lack of tenure. There is inadequate space for individual members of the family. So let's zoom into Turkey. The figures in Turkey are similar to North Africa and the Middle East. Around 6 to 8 million people in Turkey are in that category and live under such conditions. When we look at the global perspective, actually it fits the picture. 1 in 8, or maybe better than 1 in 8 actually in Turkey. So the question is, these 6 million people in Turkey, the low-income group, how do they participate in development? How do they get engaged or involved in decision-making mechanisms? Especially when it comes to the upgrading or improvement of slum areas. Do they have a say? Can they participate in those mechanisms, and what kind of mechanisms should we create so that they can be further involved? Let me quickly describe the program I'm working for. It's called Participatory Slum Upgrading Program. It is supported by the European Union and it's been going on for the last 10 years. Its main objective is to realize Sustainable Development Goal number 11.1. Is to contribute to the fulfillment of this development goal actually, because it would be too ambitious to say that this goal will be implemented. No, we will just contribute to the implementation of this goal. We started with 25 countries. At phase 2, we upscaled ourselves to 35 countries, and now we're working for 40 countries, and I'm working mainly with Pacific countries. What do? We work in 2 different fields. We help the cities and countries in policy development. we try to help the cities to engage people living at the bottom of the pyramid to decision-making processes when these decisions are made on their surroundings, on the slums. And we also promote the fact that the cities have to monitor sustainable development goals, and states must undersign certain international agreements and fulfill their duties and deliver their objectives. We develop certain tools for the cities and countries to use, and we provide capacity building support. Our main objective actually is capacity building. But at this phase, we also move to the implementation stage as well. You can find further information on the website if you're interested about the project. So let's come to the main topic. How can we promote participation at the grassroots level? I'll talk about 4 instruments. The basic thing is to have a multi-stakeholder participation mechanism. The idea is to establish such a mechanism and to ensure that this mechanism is an operational one, is a functioning one. You may go and ask the people of a neighborhood about their expectations, about what they think. Many people may disagree with the plans, they may participate, they may not. But the main question is, what kind of mechanisms do you establish to engage participation, and are these mechanisms functional and operational? Especially for low-income people whose main objective is to survive, how can you engage them into development? How do you support them so that they find a role for themselves in development? So far, the general tendency is to send questionnaires to the organizations and to receive their feedback, maybe send a note to them about how they can further continue. This is what we generally use to engage people's participation, but it's on a voluntary basis actually, and we do not oblige people to participate. Think of people with a very low income. They only care about surviving another day, so including them, engaging them in the development process is a big challenge at the beginning by using those traditional methods. So you have to change your methodology. The red wheel is about a memorandum of understanding. When we start working with a country, we sign a memorandum of understanding with this country. It's not financially binding, but according to this memorandum of understanding, the countries agree on certain principles, like establishing those mechanisms, supporting participation, allocating sufficient budget for this, not displacing people by force. So all these processes are defined, and countries have to sign this memorandum of understanding as an indicator of their goodwill. And the second wheel is country teams, which is marked in green. We establish a multi-stakeholder mechanism which has seats for ministry representatives, NGO representatives, private sector, academia, and neighborhood representatives. And this team develops a working calendar. They get together at certain intervals throughout the year and take decisions. That was the first thing. Secondly, planning stage is very important. Unfortunately, slum areas are not integrated with the rest of the city, and no strategies have been defined about how to integrate the slum neighborhoods into the decision-making processes. Which is why the municipality focused on specific areas and tried to upgrade those specific areas. But this was not a holistic approach actually. So at this stage, we make an analysis of the profile of the people and a holistic strategy about how to upgrade them as a whole. Planning is important. Another important thing is finance. I agree with what you said. I agree with what you all said. Countries also are in agreement with us. They signed a memorandum of understanding. But when it comes to chipping in, they shy away. Which is why we tell the countries that your commitment is valid only as far as the funds you provided. So we have a commitment fund. This fund is used to carry out projects in the region or in the slum area. And the second purpose of gathering this fund is to help people living in the slums actually, because when they go to a bank to take a loan, nobody would give them a loan because they don't have any credit rating, which is why they have to go to the black market to find money. But this mechanism is very helpful because it helps the individuals in the slum to receive some loans for little repair work in their homes or to start a small business. It's a very simple but a very effective financing mechanism for slum people. This finance mechanism has been tested in 9 countries. Because of lack of time, I can only show you the example from Ghana. In Ghana, a small neighborhood fund was established. We also supported this fund as UN Habitat. The local people used this fund to repair the roads in their neighborhood and to start a little waste collection system. It also provided microcredits to local people. I have 2 more slides. Let me briefly explain those slides as well. This is another project we're working on at the moment. The objective of this project is to engage further grassroots participation by establishing a fund package. This fund package will be used for transforming neighborhoods. Again, it will provide financial support for local transformation, and it will also trigger further large-scale investments from the local and national authorities. We have a training next week planned for Caribbean countries. It starts with planning, affordability, strategic entry points, subsidies. And it helps to establish a sustainable stakeholder mechanism. And the legal system of a country will be analyzed as well. So everything will be analyzed to help people how they can have access to financing within their localities. This package is ready, and in many countries we are now training people to use this package, and it is tailor-made for specific countries. Thank you very much.
Evet, Sayın Engindeniz.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Engindeniz. Access is very important when it comes to political participation. Many public institutions and municipalities have mechanisms for segments which are already able to participate. But the example you provided is very important because this program targets people who are deprived of such mechanisms actually, people with a low budget and people who live in slum areas. Now let's move on to the next speaker, Secretary General of Kadıköy City Council, Ms. İkbal Polat.
İkbal Hanım,
She was born in Bursa and she studied in Yıldız Technical University in 1996. Following Habitat 2 conference, she also joined the foundation efforts of the society and following the earthquakes, she joined civil society for earthquake foundation effort, and in Bursa she also joins the city council and responsible person for neighborhoods. And today she will talk about the city councils and good practices from Kadıköy will be delivered. And in Nilüfer, what happens in the neighborhood councils will be mentioned. Well, 10 years ago, everything was different, but today I see that things have evolved. And I want to focus on 3 topics. When we talk about the local governance in Turkey, there are very important items that will help bottom-up governance. Well, the 13th article of the municipality law is important, and it was enacted in 1930. It's a very valuable article. What are the roles of the local administration? Before this role was defined, the Article 13 defined many factors, and the participation of the citizens were mentioned in Article 13 in the law, and this is very important for us. I would like to highlight it. The second article is the one that I will talk more on, city councils. It is the 76th article of the municipality law, and in 2015 the reforms made also had it enacted. Habitat 2 process and local agenda 21 application with the Ministry of Internal Affairs enriched the Article 76 about the city councils. What does that article say? So there are some tasks and responsibilities of the city councils. The one is localization of the Sustainable Development Goals. In 1992, the United Nations Conference was organized on sustainable development, and Local Agenda 21, the localization of that agenda, and global targets. Well, all of those will be localized by the city council, and the localization will be observed. So this was the first task. The second task is a governance mechanism. If you focus on the city or the district, whichever scale you talk about, the parties in the city, the universities, the administrators, the unions, the NGOs, the political parties, every representative, every partner will come together to create a common solution to the problems. So such an environment is vital, and they will communicate and create the basis for dialogue and govern together. So this is a very good example of governance. So there are city councils which will enable a build-up governance. And the third part is the participation. How can citizens participate decision making? How can we organize this participation? So the city councils are responsible to do this. 500,000 or 1 million residents are living in Esenyurt, for instance. How can these people join the decision making in the municipality? So we need a structure. So the city councils have a role in that. The fourth item is the development and improvement of civil society. In a research, it is shown that in France, there is one union for every 40 people. In Turkey, it is one union or one society for 900 people. In Kadıköy, it is one society, union or association for 400 people. So foundations, unions, etc. We need a basis for them to thrive, and the disabled, the elderly, the disadvantaged, LGBT, so everyone, all the disadvantaged people need a platform to come together. So the city councils also will work for that. I'm talking quite fast because I have very limited time. And the fifth spot is check balance. So we have a strong mayor and a weak city council. So there is a need for check balance here. Auditory organ is needed. So the city council will work as an advisory, and mayor also can advise to the city council. So 5 tasks for the city councils. They are mentioned in the law, in the legislation, but only 30 of the 1,300 municipalities have city councils. So 1,000 municipalities don't have city councils. And Kadıköy City Council, we have 360 members, and we have general assemblies twice a year. We have working groups, and we work together with our members and participate to the decision making. The City Council. And in Kadıköy, for instance, we have collaborations with the Turkish European Foundation on preparation of the climate adaptation program. We worked together for a year, and at the end we had climate ambassadors, and Kadıköy municipality climate ambassadors and NGOs collaborated to calculate the carbon emissions of Kadıköy municipality and sustainable energy plan and an adoption plan. So the city councils are there, and we have the third aspect. So I mentioned the articles I have to mention. So 41 article. I will just skip it because many municipalities already work on that article. Ninth article is another important article. In 2005, the second section of the ninth article gives us a very important legal infrastructure for us to work. And the second section says, after describing neighborhood, the neighborhood governor can meet the citizens of the neighborhood and can work with the citizens to improve the conditions of the neighborhood and can take the results of this study to the related authorities. Çanakkale, Eskişehir, Odunpazarı, and some similar cities and districts did it. Nilüfer is one municipality did it. In 2009, Nilüfer had a civil formation. They had committees, assemblies, and while they were doing it, the municipality said, I'm not going to appoint people to work in the assemblies. There will be elections and the citizens will choose who will be in the assembly. And we shouldn't pick the people who are already elected to be the neighborhood administrator or the headman, the local authority. We will have an election out of people who are not posted anywhere, who do not have a post anywhere. So we will not start with 300 first. In 2010, one person will represent 1,200 people, and then in the following year it will be one person per 600 people, and then the following year it will be, in 2014 it will be one representative for 300 people. If we're talking about a population of 1,200 people living in a neighborhood, we have 15 members, natural members, and we have 15 elected members. So they will talk about the pavements, the pruning of the trees. So they'll talk about the problems of the neighborhood. What you can do as municipality is to inform them about your strategic planning, and you can inform them about the number of the parks to be constructed and the repairment of the roads or pavements. So you can put anything or similar stuff into the neighborhood assembly. And there is a model they follow, and there is a business flow. And when a project is being developed, when a plan or project, project or budget is formed, the neighborhood assemblies should be consulted to. The municipality said. So when you have something to do in the neighborhood, you will go to the neighborhood assembly, and the neighborhood assembly check your file and then send it back, approving it or not approving it. So in 2012-2014 revision process, their neighborhood assemblies were asked, what are your demands for strategic plans? And Göksu said, we want park. In 2011, you asked it for 2012-2014 revision plan. So it is in the plan, it's accepted, and the strategic development administration decides when they can do it. In Göksu, we will have a park in 2013. When they are in 2013, where does the file go? It goes to the plan and project administration, and then they go back to the Göksu neighborhood and they tell them, where do you want your park? And the city planner came, the zoning plan was mentioned and worked on, and there was a meeting to decide where the park should be. So one said east, one said west, and one said in the middle. So someone called the mayor, someone called the deputy, from the municipality. So they all, someone called MP. So there was a polarization in terms of where the park will be built. So at the end they decided it will be on a particular side. So we told them how to take a decision together. And then they take the plan to the related administration. How will the park be built? Will there be a sand pool? Will there be any big tools for the adults, etc.? So they are invited to the neighborhood and they decide what kind of park is needed for that district. So the neighborhood assembly and the citizens from the neighborhood come together, and the file goes from administration to administration all through the municipality, and the citizens follow what is going on, and you can see everything in the workflow, and you can found the business how by establishing such structures in the neighborhood scale. When we look at it in Istanbul, our neighborhoods have 30,000, 40,000 citizens. So it is almost a district or a small town in the Anatolia. So we need a local and on-site management, and we need participation from all the partners. Sorry, I spoke too fast because I had 15 minutes. Thank you. Dear participants, the citizen assemblies will be presented by 3 people. We heard the first speaker. As you know, in Rio conference, the millennial development goals were mentioned, and Agenda 21 mentions city assemblies. There are 3 tools. City assembly is one of them, and there will be working groups and assemblies working with them. In 2004-2005, when there were municipality laws, there was a change in the sequencing. The citizen assembly was taken to be a roof, and there will be a sub assemblies like for children, for the disabled, for women, etc. And there might be other sub-assemblies and working groups, again on women, or could be children or animals, etc. I also work on local governance myself. So the local administration focuses on the legislation, saying we should change this article, we should do this, but the local administrations do the best updates I can say, and the law that was amended before still empty inside, I can say. So we have a lot of opportunity to improve the political area, but I see that these are not assessed well. So dear Iqbal put it very well with examples. Now we have a young friend, Nusret Bozkurt.
Zeytinburnu Kent
He is from Zeytinburnu Citizen Assembly, and I talked about these sub-assemblies within citizen assemblies. He is the head of the assembly for people with disabilities. He was born in 1991. He is a student at Istanbul Yüzüncü University, Department of Logistics. He is at a second year at university. Now that he is a member of the Citizen Assembly of Zeytinburnu, he has taken part in many different projects in his neighborhood, especially with students. He delivered lots of talks and seminars about people with disabilities and the rights of people with disabilities to high school students. You can stay where you are, or you can come to the podium. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the moderator, Marmara Municipalities Union, and you, the distinguished audience, for giving me the opportunity to address you here. I'm here to talk about the Youth Council, Youth Assembly of Zeytinburnu. Let me first explain what a citizen assembly is. A citizen assembly is a structure which helps to develop a city vision, which is there to develop the understanding of being from the same neighborhood, to protect the rights and legal aspects of the city, and to trigger the principles of solidarity, transparency, accountability, participation, governance, and local management. Zeytinburnu Citizen Assembly, since its establishment, it's very active, but let me talk about how it was established. It was established with a decision of the City Council of Zeytinburnu, taken on 22nd of October 2004. With this decision, Local Agenda 21 was established in Zeytinburnu neighborhood. We did not have city councils back then, or citizen assemblies back then. And back in those times, instead of assemblies, the municipalities had working groups, or they have a special term, cocoons. But later on, with the Article 76 of the Law on Municipalities, the name was changed to Zeytinburnu Citizen Assembly. At the moment, in our citizen assembly, we have smaller groups, one on people with disabilities, one on youth, one on women, and one on senior citizens. Altogether, we have 5 assemblies and 5 different working groups on different topics. Let me briefly talk about our activities. Last week, we had an earthquake in Istanbul. It was a small tremor, but we fear for a larger scale earthquake actually, which is why in 2016 our citizen assembly, with the participation of search and rescue organizations like AFAD and UNKE, we organized a drill, an earthquake drill, to improve citizens' preparedness for the earthquake. The Citizen Assembly of Zeytinburnu did more than participation actually. We want to create models for local governance. We do not expect everything from the national government. Our mentality, our understanding is to develop models ourselves so that we can implement them at the local level. In 2015, we initiated a project for bringing people together for awareness. The reason why we initiated such a process was that in our first General Assembly in 2014, we were elected within the assembly, and back then we saw that many people with disabilities were hesitant to participate in social life. And we also understood that there were some prejudices against the people with disabilities among the society. We had to break that ice. We had to put an end to it. We had to give opportunities to people with disabilities. Which is why we asked people with disabilities to come and join us so that we can govern this process together. It was important for us to reach out to young people, because it is the young people of today who will become adults tomorrow and will raise children. It is the young people of today which will shape the future of the world. That's why we started delivering seminars to high schools and universities. In those seminars, we talked about what disabilities are. We also explained them how they should treat people with disabilities when they see one in the social surroundings. So far, with those seminars, we managed to reach out to 5,000 students. This project was initiated in Zeytinburnu, but soon the news spread to the rest of Istanbul and drew the attention of the National Ministry's local branch in Istanbul, Ministry of National Education. And we initiated a project with the District Directorate of Education and disseminated the seminars to the rest of Istanbul. And visited many important high schools like Kabataş and Galatasaray. I believe that these seminars proved to be very successful. We understand its success because of the feedback we get. For instance, we heard people saying that I used to be scared of people with disabilities. I wasn't able to look at them. But now my opinions have completely changed. My perspective is completely changed. This is what we heard from people. Again, another successful assembly of our Citizens Assembly is the Assembly on Women. Remember, earlier I said that we want to create models which can be taken as a model for the rest of Turkey. Our Women Assembly is an exemplary one, actually. Every spring, they organize festivals. And with the income they raise in those festivals, the Women Assembly was able to help a birth hospital and thanks to this fund, a specific hotel for mothers was established in a birth hospital, maternity hospital. And this is our elderly or senior citizens assembly. They have a seminar for health issues for elder people. The objective is to inform senior citizens about possible potential health issues. We had to find a common denominator for senior people to come together. The senior citizens assembly members told that the common denominator can be health, because we're getting old and we have more health problems than ever before. This can be a glue for bringing together elderly people, they said. It was a great idea. And thanks to such seminars, we see more people coming to the Citizens Assembly. I hope I was able to explain ourselves. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Taha'ya hem
Well, thank you, Taha, for using your time effectively and also for sharing what you do in your assembly. We wish you good luck in the future. Our last speaker is Menaf Turan from Yüzüncü University. He's a professor at this university. Since 2015, he serves as a consultant to the Union of Chambers and Commodity Exchanges of Turkey. He has administrative roles at the university as well. He is a member of the Special Committee on Urban Development, and he is also the chairman of One Tushba Council. Today, he's going to talk about the Citizen Assembly in Tushba. Thank you.
buyurun.
Karşılıklı yardımlaşıyoruz Taha'ya.
Evet.
Hanımefendiler ve
Ladies and gentlemen, and dear professors and dear colleagues and dear students, thank you. In terms of governance, we are having a panel. Dear Professor Ilhan, of course, wrote a lot about governance, and he did a lot to have governance well settled in Turkey, so I would like to send my regards to him. So, Citizen Assembly. 2 years ago, Tushpa Mayor called me and he said, we have a citizen assembly now, can you deliver a presentation? I said, yes, I can have a presentation delivered at the citizen assembly. And then I went to the hall and they said, the mayor would like to see you, and he was a fellow student from the university. And then I went to the mayor's office and he said, well, we are looking for head for the citizen assembly. I said, I am an academic, I don't have time for it. And he said, you should start and then we will see what's going to happen. So I went to the hall, I delivered the presentation. 76 people were there and they all voted in favor of me, and I became the head of the citizen assembly. And then we had a board composed of 9 people I never heard. Tushpa Citizen Assembly. This is how I became a head of the assembly. Okay, I'm not going to go into the details of this part. In 24th of January 2018, I had to apply because it was the last date for application. So that led to certain other routes, of course. We had 9 board members at the beginning, but we wanted to make this more professional, and I worked hard and took responsibility, and I said this doesn't have a full representation. We should have a high advice commission organized once or twice a year. The previous mayors, the previous director of the chamber, Union of Chambers and Commodity Exchanges should come and join us. So we had that, and then we said board is not sufficient either because there were 9 board members, but there weren't enough women, no young people. So we also had a board of 25 people. There were academics from the university as well. There was doctors, sports medicine doctors, there was a gynecologist, and we had an industrialist. So we had lots of people. So 25 plus 25, we had 50 people there. So we created a vision with our board of 25 people. One is a historic city. Istanbul was a capital to 2 or 3 civilizations. One was a capital of one civilization, but it was a very old civilization. So we think one city is an important city. So we kept division a bit long, but we said this is democracy, otherwise I'll make it shorter. But I didn't intervene very much. I said, well, you can do as you wish. Our principles and values are similarly. I wanted the benefit of the public to be here, especially because it is very important, public interest. This is what I added here. So we have 110 people for the general board, but 76 people appeared that day. And we have 2 deputy presidents, deputy heads. One was a woman, one was a young person, and we had a high advisory board, and we had an executive council or executive board composed of 25 people each. We had representatives from the rural places. By the way, Tushpa doesn't have a downtown. We have a small industrial zone. We have small villages around, and we do not have a center. Our municipality building belongs to the other municipality, and we want to have a citizen assembly in such a place, and it's important why we had a citizen assembly. I will skip the working groups. There are retired people, and there are some people who go to the men's cafe, and we played together. We discussed it together, actually. The problems were discussed together. So I want to explain to you how we were founded. It is related to the local governance as well. After we switched to a metropolitan municipality administration in one, well, HDP party won the municipalities elections, and the city council was closer to the HDP, and then they got a bit away from the HDP party. But whatever, in Tushpa district, it's a rural district. There is no center, and there are villagers. There are people who come from the rural areas, and in such a place, it's quite easy to have a citizen assembly. I mean, you can have a single target, like integrating the villagers to the cities. Then something else happened in 2015, 2016, following the coup attempt of 2015. We had trustees appointed to all of the municipalities. And the trustees were appointed, and in the legislation it says the deputy mayor might gather a meeting together, might demand a meeting, but might gather a meeting for the citizen assembly, but they didn't do it. And whatever you do, you won't make people embrace something they don't want. For instance, if you build a road people don't want, they won't use it. So what I'm trying to say is, we did valuable stuff, but we what we did was then put aside. And the citizen assemblies could help the trustees, actually. Then we had 3 governors. When the governor changes, the mayor changes. We have something similar now, and I think it should be a proposition for solution. When the trustee comes, let's say, the mayor and the city assembly alone are not annulled. There are other members, there are a citizen assembly, for instance, and we can't do business either. So in one, I'll try to explain to you our operations, but we weren't there to deal with the Tushpa municipality problems, but we wanted to fill in the gap that was created, and we organized to do that. Following the elections, what happened? I'll explain you that soon. These are the operations. In one, breakfast is quite popular, and we have breakfast meetings, and we talk together. There mayor went back to the university. Well, there are a few women here, but there are more people, actually, more women, actually, because they were a bit late. They are on the other side. So Tushba City Council started working again, and the mediator system was just in, and we have an organized industrial zone, and we said let's have a panel together, let's invite everyone to meet. And then we heard that one member of the city council wasn't doing very good with the head of the industrial zone. So we had a meeting, and we had a youth assembly, and then we had a management we had a board meeting. There is no food at the table today that time, as you see, and our problem was about economic development. We focused on it. At the university we had meetings, and the Metropolitan Municipality Secretary General was invited. Now he is the mayor in Kayseri Tavas, and he was invited by the city council and citizen assembly. And then we had a meeting with the students, and then we also received applications for the disabled assembly memberships. There were very valuable people there too. Then we had some talks. Mithat Melen, the late and we had a citizen assembly, and we were notified that we will be visited by the Turkish Citizen Assemblies Union, and we had very good meetings with them. We compared our problems, and back then I was broadcasting a show on TV, and we invited them to our TV program in the evening. And then we were involved actively in an EU project as a citizen assembly. And someone from Gaziantep came to one, and he explained his experiences with the citizen assembly. So our citizen assembly hasn't yet met for the board meeting. Our mayor changed again. We have a different mayor from the same political party, another mayor from the same political party. In 31st of March, we had elections, and then they told me, you're going to be a candidate to be a mayor. I said no. They said, you will be a candidate to be a mayor. And then I became a candidate, but I lost with a small difference. Whatever, I couldn't be a mayor. I had more than 33,000 votes out of 70,000 votes. This is something important for me, In selection and representation of the citizen assembly, we had some difficulties, and those difficulties made me lose the election. So since I didn't behave in a certain way demanded by certain people, I was vetoed. And what I'm trying to say here is the citizen assemblies are not distributing favors, so people do not commit my phone was always open for citizen assembly, and they were the most difficult days of my life, I can say. So participation in the academic world, we discuss participation a lot, and citizens participate into the things that are interesting for them or that matter to them. It can be a zoning problem, it can be an appointment or reappointment to another place. So if they are interested in it, they'll be there. If it is something that is indirect to them, I mean, like earthquake. By the way, in 2011 we had a terrible earthquake in Van, and we work on it, but we do not have high participation in earthquake, for instance. But when there is a personal issue, they will participate more. So let me put it together. I'm sorry, but participation is not a problem in Turkey, but there is a problem of voluntary participation. So there is a problem about a community problem, participation to community problems. But in terms of individual participation or participation to individual problems, there is no participation problem in this regard. Thank you very much for this nice presentation. Well, it's very valuable to solve small-scale problems. And in terms of political culture, he shared important information with us. Dear participants, we have listened all of our presenters. Now we will have participation from you, since our session is also about participation. We have a few methods for your participation. There is the mobile app. You can send your questions from there. I don't know whether it's easy or not, so if you would like to have floor here directly, you can have floor. And here we have a very experienced professor. Can we have the microphone here, please? Can we have your contribution, dear professor?
Diğer katılımcılarımız da sorularını bu arada hazırlarlarsa hemen onların da sorularını, katkılarını alacağız. Evet, buyurun.
Merhabalar. Tabii bu katılımcılığı şöyle bir şey.
People do not want to be governed. Being governed is not a nice thing, actually. They just succumb to it. They just have to surrender to being governed because there is no other option. So now that this is the case, we have to turn it into a decent relationship. This can only be achieved by means of participation and governance. One of the biggest obstacles in front of participation is the time it takes. It takes a long time. So unnecessary talking in those meetings is the biggest obstacle in front of participation. Time is valuable. The more we talk unnecessarily in those gatherings, the higher the chances of people dropping out. Participation is not spontaneous. Participation is not haphazard. It has to be planned in a good manner so that time is used wisely and effectively. Without planning, without good planning, you can't have any good results from participation. One more thing. By nature, participation can only be successful within smaller groups. The bigger the group is, the more difficult to attain success in participation. Smaller groups are more creative, but of course, smaller groups come with a challenge. Their sustainability is not guaranteed. Our basic problem today is the lack of logical rationale for representative democracy. But for some services, we need consistency so that representative democracy and participatory democracy function together. Representative democracy and participatory democracy can only be considered as phenomena which should be respectful to one another, and having these two together requires common sense, and it also requires a theoretical framework. To establish a theoretical framework for a functioning democracy, you have to have a model for designing the society. The representative democracy model is based on the individual and community duality. You cannot integrate participatory democracy within it. You have to change the representation of the exterior world, and there should be representation at 4 levels. Level 1 is individuals, a system of relationship between individuals, and rules which would be based on the interaction between those individuals and which became the moral. And the 4th level is the social level and social rules. Levels 1 and 4 represent representative democracy, and levels 2 and 3 represent participatory democracy. Having these two together can be done, but we still do not have a theoretical background for it. You don't have any literature proving that this is possible, but it is possible and it can be explained. Thank you very much. So let's take questions quickly because there is another session coming up at 4 o'clock. My name is Müslüm Yıldız. I'm a master's degree student at Kocaeli University. My question is to Faruk. As we saw in the Citizens Assembly example, when something is legally obligatory, it's not enough to establish a structure actually. You have to support it with local dynamics as well. So what can we do so that citizens' assemblies and local communities are backed up by people and desired by people? Yes, you can have education, you can oblige it with legislation, but what else? What else do we need to promote citizen assemblies among people? Volkan Altunok from Beşiktaş Municipality. My question is to Ali Faruk. As a result of your studies, you come up with certain designs. Is it possible to put them into practice? What are the challenges of working with municipalities, and to what extent do political levels accept these practical solutions at municipalities? I think we have one more question from the lady in the front. Hello, thank you for the presentations. I'm from Sabancı University, PhD student working on municipalities. My question is to İkbal. Thinking of citizen assemblies and successful examples, I'm wondering whether you ever had to implement conflict resolution mechanisms and how do you implement them? common decision making can be learned, but I'm thinking of a possible conflict case. Let's imagine that there's a problem which requires a technical solution, and the consultants may be recommending something, but the technical people at the municipality may disagree with it. So how do you resolve conflict in such situations? Hello, my name is Önder Kömür from Sarıyer Municipality. I have a question to Ali Faruk. Our professor, in his intervention, explained it very well. The more we have participation, the harder it gets to wrap it up actually, because when you participate more people, then almost everyone starts putting forward their individual expectations, and those individual expectations may be to the detriment of the common goal. So do you ever encounter this problem? How do you solve the problem of addressing individual expectations? Well, thank you. Now that we don't have much time left, let's quickly move on with the answers. Okay, I had two questions. Let me answer them together. First of all, we cannot agree with mayors. We cannot get along with them. Let me explain why. We established 4 workshops, and the politically elected people do not want to continue with the workshop which was initiated by the previous mayor. And we are an association. Our objective is to bring designers together with people. The biggest challenge is to deal with the bureaucracy at the municipality. And we explain them that this is social impact design. We have to analyze the situation first with the people who are going to be impacted by them. The program called Kıyı Köşe, Hidden Corners of Neighborhoods, was the most popular program we implemented so far. This program enables people to take pictures of hidden corners of their neighborhoods, which are ignored. They send pictures, and we develop projects. We develop some designs for such hidden corners. It happens in one day actually. We pick an area, we bring 10 people together, 5 designers and 5 local people. They all wear overalls and they discuss the design in 4 hours and they put it into practice in 1 hour. In fact, we want to create areas outside of the municipality, and our motto is, let's do something not in spite of, but together with municipalities. The traditional understanding of delivering services by municipalities is changing. Everything is becoming more participatory, so things will evolve in a positive manner. I didn't receive any questions, but I have final remarks about one thing. The relationship between participation and time. I think this is a process. You design a process, and of course it will take time. You shouldn't be hasty, because this is what leads us to making mistakes actually. We all want to have a magic wand and we want to have shortcuts to success, but it's not how it is in real life. So you have to design the process well and you have to manage it well. Thank you. There were 3 questions. Let me provide a common answer to them. The regulation on citizen assemblies was developed only 15 years ago actually. When we compare it with legislation dating back to 70, 80 years before, the legislation on citizen assemblies is quite young, therefore we should not expect big things from the citizen assemblies. The legislation has problems in 3 areas. One, establishing a citizen assembly is obligatory, but more than 1,000 municipalities in Turkey still have not established a citizen assembly. So, by rule, they have to establish the citizen assembly. We have to identify which municipalities have not yet established them. Secondly, the problem is with big cities. We have 30 metropolitan municipalities in Turkey, and the legislation obliges them to establish citizen assemblies, but the model is not suitable for metropolitan municipalities, so we have to change the provisions in the legislation. The third problem is about budget. So, in every municipality, the municipality budget has to have an item or an allocation for the citizen assemblies, but there is no threshold for what that budget should be. It depends on discretion of the mayor and the goodwill of the city council. Actually, we need a definition in the law about the minimum level of that budget. Actually, we tell this message to the authorities. But about your question, how we can promote citizen assemblies to people in the society, you have to change the understanding of the mayors, you have to change the understanding of city councils, and you have to change the understanding of NGOs as well. Because another problem in Turkey is that NGOs in Turkey do not know anything about local governments. They only try to deliver their messages to the national government. Municipalities, local governments must be civilized, and the NGOs in Turkey must focus more at the local level actually, rather than the national level. Well, thank you very much. We used our time effectively. Thank you very much for your participation.